Assalamu alaikum. As stated here, I'm the representative of WTW in this region, and I'm also working very closely with the Dubai Government Human Resources Department. So as strategic partner and as a representative of WTW, it is a great honor to present in this esteemed session about the importance kind of the topic that is the future skills. Hence that there has been a lot of good kind of the sharing already with the other great presenters. I would like to focus on how we manage the future skill as the Dubai government entities. Before we go into how we manage it, I would like to bring your attention to the word of VUCA. Are you familiar with this word, VUCA? Can you put your hands on if that anybody has heard of this? Only few people who is a bit aged has been holding their hands, because this is a terminology that has been very prevalent in 20 years ago. In 2002, that this terminology has been released because at that time, the whole world, or the whole business world, was very concerned about the future. The world was changing so fast in a way of like uncertainty, complexity, and the ambiguity. So people have identified that we are entering to a kind of the world that is defined as the VUCA. It is still the same case, and the reason that I also wanted to bring this VUCA on this session today is because I wanted to share one story. Before I moved to the region in 2016, I was working mainly from South Korea. And as you might know, that there's a company that has been already presented in other presenters as well, Samsung Group. So that in 2002, June, there was very similar setup like this. The chairman of the Samsung Group was having a discussion with the CEOs of its subsidiaries. The purpose of that meeting was that each CEO was to present to the chairman what will be their new growing engine for the coming 5 to 10 years. Because in 2002 is the year when the Samsung Group achieved a big success after 10 years of the transformation to the new management. So they were the leaders of the semiconductors, and that they was kind of the thriving, but the leader wanted to kind of have a kind of the urgency to look into the future. So he gave homework to all the CEOs. CEOs kind of prepared a very detailed kind of the plan to present to the chairman what will be new item for the coming 5 to 10 years that will drive the success of the Samsung Group. So it was an all-day session, and after hearing all the CEOs kind of the comments, the chairman only commented one word. How can you sure to understand that what you bring is going to be actually success in the future when you cannot forecast tomorrow? He then said, it is the people, the talent, because you cannot expect or you cannot foresee the future. The only way you can do is that you need to kind of bring the right talent that can accommodate to the future. And I was amazed. In same 2002, His Highness actually had the same perception and then established the leadership center. So I think that all the great leaders have some common the perspective. So I think that this kind of tells us that in this very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous kind of the environment, what we need to do is that we need to focus on the talent that has been already kind of the renowned and that trying to be thrive for the last 20 years. And this is driving the topic of today. While that it is already consensus kind of the idea that the talent is the most important to sustain and thrive our future, I think that what is kind of a concern to ourselves as HR professionals and business leaders is that there's a lot of like the changing forces on the world of work. And this is very similar to the Dr. Sai's kind of the presentation, which we never speak to each other. But I think that we all know that talent is important, but there is a lot of changes of the talent. Among those, that the digitalization, competition, work reinvention, multi-generation is some like the hot topic, right? And due to those factors that the culture, HR effort is kind of ever demanding than before. What does that mean? If we just kind of bring it to a bit more of our real life. So we know talent is important, but there's a lot of like the driving forces that changes the world. And among those is the digitalization. So with the digitalization, I think that some jobs that we used to have is disappearing, right? So here, robotic processes, automation, that kind of systemize all this kind of the transactional work. The cognitive automation kind of give us a AI-driven selection when it comes to the recruitment, when it comes to the onboarding. ChatGPT is now our friend to speak about our understanding of the HR policy or any kind of the concern they might have. So there are some jobs that is diminishing. However, also there are certain jobs that is appearing because of the new technology, right? So it's not pessimistic outlook. I'm more geared to the positive outlook. So we will be better off. So we will have the HR data analysis, learning designers, employee onboarding specialists, which we used to have or we didn't have, but with a different mandate. This whole change is driven by not only the technical or the digitalization, but other factors as the culture, generation, mindset. So if you look into the emerging skill set and the technology and automation and data, a new mindset, again, very similar to the Dr. Sai's kind of the highlight, that we will see emerging roles from the various different market and the location. So we will have something called like bot monitor. So a bot monitor is that you look after AI or the machine learning system that they crawl the emerging trends of the market, so we reflect those emerging skills to our organization. You have the mindset coach, so that we kind of the drive new way of the mindset, that is that HR is not only the supporting the business, but HR is collaborating with the business, so that we kind of the jointly develop the decision in an agile manner. Of course, this needs to have a new set of the operating model, but this new set of the mindset and the technology associated with the emerging HR skills will create a new roles, very fancy like cultural advisor, digital HR lead, bot monitor, head of insight, so forth. If you read these emerging HR skills, data science, storytelling, innovation, systems thinking, decision science, cross-functional thinking, design thinking, analytical thinking, behavioral science. This is the emerging skills that we have identified from the market using AI, machine learning, robot. So we crawled what is the new skill that has been demanded, and we kind of captured it here. Is it very new to you? Is this kind of the 9 different skills that is driving to the emerging roles? Is it something very new that you never expected or never had? We always had storytelling capability. We know that it is how important to have the storytelling as the HR professional. We always had our focus on the innovation, system thinking, cross-functional thinking. Most of them, of course, there are certain things like the data science. There are certain things like, not here, but like if we are thinking about like the coding program, the languages, there are a few areas that you might see very different. But those skills are not necessarily very new. It is more of evolving skill set rather than new skill set, right? Whereas, if you look into the emerging roles, they are very new, isn't it? For example, we never heard about the bot monitor. We never realized that we need to have the cultural advisor and so forth. This is telling that the business, the demand of our external environment is ever changing so fast, so we can define them as the worker. However, the people, we, are more of the stable nature. If we wanted to gain certain knowledge, it takes time, right? And that we said the new generation is very different. But 3,000 years ago, it was observed that the day people say the new generation is unruly, right? So I think that what we need to do as the HR professional is to bridge this gap between the demand from the external environment to the supply of human being, how we can address those changes in an agile and appropriate manner. Let me tell you what that means. In the past, predominantly, organization has been using what we call the job that is more or less aligned to the organizational structure. So you set an organization structure with specific mandate. You have set the leadership center to educate the leadership across the Dubai government like the civil servants. And you have identified that specific individual's role, like the coach, educators, program developer, and so forth. So that is what we call job. Employees typically align to the single job, and that they kind of progress within that kind of the track. That is what we typically have until now. But if we are to bridge what we just discussed, which is the external environment, the business environment is changing so fast with the uncertainty, complexity, and the ambiguity, but the people are not necessarily that fast-changing being, but they do have the skills. How can we bridge those two together? And this is what we call future of work. The core crux of the future of work is the deconstruction. Deconstruction of the work that can be aligned to the individual skill set. It is only possible because that we now have a technology that we never have been thinking of. The transactional cost is massively low. We have now new mindset that has been evolved, that kind of the input to the operating model. So in the future, the way to bridge is that you deconstruct the work. Leadership, training is not only the responsibility of the leadership trainer. It is a collaborative work of content developer, presenter, logistic setting, evaluator, which can be employees of the leadership center or the like freelancer, gig worker, outsourcer, or the vendors. So the work will be deconstructed and identified to the right skill in order for us to maximize the utilization of the human being and serve the purpose of the organization at the same time. So the future of work will be not only comprised or combined by the full-time employees, it will be including the external talent, different types of the talent, and the variety of the experiences on the skill and the knowledge will be associated to the demand and the supply. So we need to shift to a new foundation to bridge the gap and maximize our potential to address the future needs of the skill. So I think that this is how we believe that we can manage it by having deconstructed different kind of the framework. And we have run a survey in 2022, about a year ago, across the world, how they are planning and how they are ready for the changes. So it was about like the 1,600 kind of the global companies participated, and among 50 of them, they are saying that they are planning to optimize the work. So they no longer is going to manage the people by people, but they are going to have the job or the skill set to manage more fluidly. 80% of the participants said that they were planning to change the total reward because that the job-based, very rigid and the narrow kind of the pay band is no longer serving the full potential of the skill holders that is driving the organization's success from one individual skill. So they are changing it. Most importantly, 90% of the organization is saying that they are looking into the career management framework because obviously that if you wanted to leverage the skill set, you need to move people across your organization. You need to have the beyond your internal and external to drive that the utilization from the people. And all of this is centered on employee experience. So in the past, and maybe it is because that in the past it is very difficult for us to actually track and assess the employee experience directly. However, due to the evolution of the technology, then now we are more able to follow what actually employees feel, and they actually do change their behaviors to the programs that we provide. So all these changes are centered on the employee experience rather than the policy and the programs. So this is what we have noticed. So many organizations, especially the advanced global organizations, are gearing to change to the new foundation. And if we go into the details, I think that the numbers are very similar to the Dr. Syed. So I think that this is validated within the session already, that we will see in 3 years, so in 3 years that they have already spent 1 year already, that they are 44% is trying to identify the new skill requirement. So we know what is the evolving the skill. But we also know it's not only identifying the new skill, but it is more important to have multi-skill to enable the employees to do the task in a different jobs, right? Because if we identify new skill, what about the current employees? Where do we get the new talent that is only stick to the new identified skill? And you know from the previous few examples that the new skills are not necessarily very new. It is more of the evolving skill. So more people are focusing on having a multi-skill set. And to do that, they need to have the alternative work model. So not only 9 to 5, full-time employment, one job and the one task only. They need to have more flexibility about it. And one of the least kind of area that has been kind of addressed is the utilizing technology. Because the technology evolution speed is so rapid. So at that time when we did the survey, that only less than 1/3 is leveraging on the technology. But we all know if we wanted to bridge this complex deconstruction of work to the diverse talent capability, technology is the key. So we need to kind of leverage this. So this is about the crux of the optimizing the work. Another one is the total reward. So the total reward, again, if we are moving to the more of the skill-based foundation, no longer that our previous grade-wise compensation or the job pricing approach will be suffice the needs to attract and retain the talent. So it needs to be looked into more broader overall kind of the total reward. And I think that before we have this presentation, I had a very brief chat with His Excellency Abdullah, and he also kind of had a very similar view of the well-being, long-term financial well-being, and the holistic perspective that we need to cater to attract the skill, utilize the skill, and retain the skill in our organization. So the compensation is also transforming to more broader. And when it comes to the career, that we also have looked into the changes. And I think that this is another source of survey that we have done in the Middle East about 3 months ago, that we found it out that in this region, we are still working on leveling, which is the typical hierarchical grading structure. So almost 70-80% of the organization is still using the leveling. Only half of them has been considering different nature of the job within the grade, right? So we are slightly moving toward the knowledge, the skill set based, and the leveraging those skill set through the career management. Only 20% has been kind of implemented it and planning to implement it. But I'm very proud that Dubai government is the foreleading in this transformation. So I think that we can definitely get advantage against the other part of the world if we are successfully transforming what we are planning to do in near future. If I bring all this together, I think that this is a new kind of the foundation that we are proposing as the company through various research and initiative. Of course, this is not the only way of doing it, but what we are saying is that in the past that you were more or less focused on the leveling. Few advanced organizations has moved to the job architecture. However, now we know with the acceleration of the pandemic, of these changes, that we know that the skill needs to be incorporated to the job architecture to form the foundation that can maximize the employees' skill and their capability. And in order to do that, not only the foundation, but the enablement, which is the career pathing, career communication associated with the technology to activate the change is mandatory. So new operating model, new experiences needs to be focused. Maybe this is a bit conceptual, high level, so I bring one example. So what does this really mean to our real life? So if we bring everything together, we will have a job, still a job, because then we need to hire people, we need to assign people. But the job is not based on the accountability only, but this is based on the competency and the skill that is required to do certain accountability. So it will be embedded into the job, and I think that this here, the competency is what the Dr. Syed kind of mentioned as the soft skill. That skill is more of the technical skill. So there are different layers of the skill set. However, we can combine to the level where that we, as an organization, can manage in a sustainable manner. If we have this framework, it will be benefiting for all our kind of the management going forward, to the HR professional like yourself, to the business professional, which is the orange, and then to the employees as well. So it will be benefiting all the stakeholders within the organization by first, for example, workforce planning. What are we going to do? Is that if we have identified this skill structure into our foundation, we will not only know the head count of the grade, head count of the entity, but when there's a need of that we need to have a certain skill, digital skill, communication skill, like investment skill, we know what kind of the employees hold the skill and match it internally so that we have the more better use of the people. We have the efficiency in managing those talent and more flexibility on organizing the work that we need to do. Recruitment and selection, I know you already have been doing this, but that we can enhance the identifying the right talent through the skill so that the competency-based interview can be enhanced, so you will have the more right people in your organization. Performance management. It's not only about what the job is requiring for you, but it is also about what you can provide to the organization so that we unlock the potential of the employees through this performance management and discussion with the skills and their contribution. Pay delivery, ultimately we need to move to the skill-based structure, new broadbanding, new pay for the performance. But at the same time that we need to think about interim solutions like the premium pay associated to the demand and the supply. Of course, as you know, that the learning and development, the career planning and growth, and the succession management is actually centered on the skill and the knowledge. So I think that if we have the right framework, and if we have the right HR operating model policies, I think that the previous presenters kind of the argument that heroes are not necessarily something new, that they are someone from the ordinary life, move into the new job, gain the new skill, matured and advanced, become the hero for the job, and become another hero for another job going forward. So that I hope that with this kind of presentation today, we would like to have a more positive outlook on the future skills. So we are not scared about the future skill, but we will manage the future skills so that we can be the heroes, and then hope that the Dubai will thrive going forward. Thank you. So this is my kind of the end of the presentation. I will open the question and answers if you have any. Yes, please.
Thank you for the presentation. It was really thorough and covered a lot of areas. In my current workplace, I currently work a lot with preparing job descriptions and creating career paths. So my question for you, my good sir, is when you, in one of the slides, you mentioned that 90% of organizations, companies, and entities are really interested in defining careers at their organization. Would you mind if you go a little bit into the specific in that area by what you mean by defining careers at the organization? My second question is, in one of the slides, you mentioned that total reward philosophy is instead replacing the current job grading system. So my question is, would you mind going a little more into the specifics as to why the current job grading system people are choosing other alternative from the current job grading system? Thank you.
Right. Thank you for the question. I mean, it is always a pleasure to have the question because it shows the engagement of the audience. So if I recap what you just asked, is there are two questions. The first one is that I have told you that 90% of the participation is looking to change of the career management. Can I speak more details about it? The second one is I mentioned about moving from the job leveling to more of the skill-based structure. Is there any consequences of the details? What was the issue with the job leveling? What is the benefit of the moving to the new skill set? So to answer the first question, I think that 90% is a kind of the respondent rate of the participant to the survey when we asked, what are you planning to change your career management system in next 3 years? And the 90% of the people said, yes, we will. What does that mean is that we kind of interpret it into twofold. One is that career management, as you have seen in the Middle East cases, is not necessarily very prevalent across all the organization. So it is an immediate need than others. So 90% of say, yes, we need to do something about it. Why do they need to do something when they don't have it? Because, especially outside of this region, attraction is a very hot topic nowadays. You are not necessarily able to attract the right people. Many organizations is suffering from the shortage of the people because they are kind of hired by the other organization. So the career management includes development, include the hiring, include of the utilization of resources internally and externally. So therefore that we anticipate that 90% of the people are looking to set something to address the challenges that they have with the attraction and the retention by hiring different nature of the employment, such as the freelancer, gig worker, or even the outsourcers, and also develop within the organization to maximize the utilization of their current employees. So that is my answer to the first question. The second one is the leveling to the knowledge architecture or the skill architecture. Leveling, we are not aborting the leveling. Please be mindful of it is more of a kind of the developing to adding another aspects of the leveling rather than replacing it. Because the leveling does serve the purposes. What the leveling is, as we are all HR professionals, that you know, the leveling is the hierarchy ranking of the job contribution to the organization success, right? However, when we know internally that the leveling is the hierarchy of those ranking, what I just mentioned related to the career, the key change is that the organization is not only operating within the internal resources anymore. It is expanding to the external resources, have a continuous hire and the kind of the turnover, but at the same time working with the partners, working with the freelancers. So in order to do that, we cannot only looking into the internal hierarchy ranking, but external market competitiveness as well. And when we look into the external market competitiveness, because the market price is not associated to our organizational success, right? So that they are more geared to the demand and supply of the skill set that is required within the specific market. Hence, that having the grading, but attaching what kind of the job is within the grade, and more importantly, what kind of the skill can perform the job that is contributing to our organizational success. So we are expanding the concept from the leveling to what we call broader career framework.
If you would allow further on that. I'll give you an example. For example, now programming is a very rare skill, and it's a skill that is in very high demand, at least in our current market, as far as I know, in my experience working with recruitment. So in the new skill-based leveling system, would programming would have its own skill price on it?
I was not able to hear you in the beginning because the microphone was off. Can you repeat one more time?
If programming was a skill, and in the new skill-based leveling system, would the programming as a skill or as a competency will have a price, a higher price, due to its high demand in the external market?
So you are saying that the scale of the competency, will that be tied to the market? That's what you are saying?
Yes. Can you confirm if the competency or the skill would be affected with the demand in the external market? For example, programming is a very high demand skill right now. So will that make it in the new skill-based system a higher leveling grade, for example?
All right, just to clear your question, so you are referring to the project that we are currently doing, and whether that our output, the deliverable, will be having the level of the competitiveness to the external and associated to that granularity, right? So I think that his question, and I think he was involved in other kind of the session that we are currently doing as the project. So his question is that if we are moving to the skill set architecture, our deliverables, will that kind of serve the purposes of aligning the internal to the external? And yes, we will have the right level that can be align our internal need as well as the external perspective, but not only rigid, but it can be more dynamic and fluid, so we can sustainably evolving over the time. More to come. Thank you for asking that.